What's up, fam? It's Zara. Listen, I a lot of boxes and stuff behind me. We're in the process of getting ready to move. Sometime this year, early on, getting a job out on the East Coast. Hopefully, fingers still crossed on that. My wife's got 2 interviews. I've got an interview. They're all very promising. We're very confident. It feels more like it's one of those, like, it's more of a formality more than it is anything. But enough about that. Let's talk about something that's been bugging me for a long time. And just so you guys are aware, this is not a WoW video. If you're here for WoW or Classic WoW, don't worry. It's not what this is. But feel free, please stick around because you might want to listen to this, especially if you're a sports fan. College football, man. Let's talk about it. Okay, so as all of you can tell, Razorback fan. I have been born and bred Razorback Red since before I was thought of. And let me explain. There are fans, and then there are, different variations of that. You have your fair weather fan, you have your sort of kind of fan, every other Sunday kind of fan, things like that. They're a fan when the game is on and not so much when the game's off. I'm a diehard fan. I'm talking like I'm a fanatic in every sense of the word. I will get so emotional with my Razorbacks that I will get a pit in my stomach anytime that they are not performing well. Now, it's not a matter of winning or losing, because as a former football coach, I understand and also a player, I understand that there's always going to be a winner and a loser. There is in every competition. Winning and losing is not my problem. Winning and losing has never been my problem. It's how you win and how you lose is a problem that I have. For example, I'll give this as an example. If you are the type of team that goes out and wins, and I kind of liken this to Georgia in recent years. Nothing against Georgia fans, nothing against the program, nothing against Kirby, nothing against the players. Like this, just from an outside person's perspective, I question all of these DUIs, DWIs, and everything else these players are getting involved with. And I'm like, how much of that is a culture issue that's at the coach's feet, and how much of it is just a product of what we're dealing with today with young kids? I mean, you get these kids that are coming in there now making, several $100,000, in some cases millions of dollars, just to play ball at the collegiate level. And that does something to a young kid's brain, especially if they're not brought up and raised to respect money and how it's earned and what it takes to actually bring about that kind of cash flow in a typical everyday and, working man's lifetime. Like, somebody like me, some of you may know I'm married to a doctor. Yes, I'm in a unique position. She's in a unique position. We are in a unique position. I was in the military. She had government programs that she was able to use to allow her to not have to pay back student loans, but she had to pay back time, so she had to serve in a certain area. That's why we're out in West Texas to begin with. Like, those are sacrifices we made so that we didn't have these things called student debt. We didn't have loans or anything else we had to pay off. And now we're in a position to make some really good money. But that took her, I was just thinking about this earlier, it took her 14 years. She had an extra year of residency. She had an extra year of fellowship. It took her 14 years if you factor in college, medical school, residency, fellowship. And if you factor in the 3 years it took her to pay back her time, it took her 16, 17 years, man, to get to where she has the freedom to go out and do whatever she wanted. We've been married for almost a decade. We have 3 kids in that same time frame. And it's like, man, that was not an easy road to go down. And here I am being a stay-at-home dad. I've tried finding a job. I've been looking for a job for over a year, which is why we're having to move, because the only way I was able to find a job was picking up the phone and calling my Navy buddies and saying, hey, look, I've looked everywhere in the private sector. Nobody likes the fact that I haven't been working for 5 years because I chose to stay home with my kids. I have a 4-year degree, honorably discharged from the Navy. I have every commendation you can get in the 6 years that I was in. And at the same time, I have outstanding evals and I have outstanding, service record. No marks of any kind whatsoever anywhere. No blemishes. Never been in trouble with the law. Good, clean nose, Christian guy. I finally get a couple of interviews on the East and West Coast, and I'm like, I don't want to go to California because any extra money we would make would go to paying off the tax differential, so I don't want to do that. So the East Coast is where we're headed. But talking about that, thinking about this process of moving and money management and everything else, I'm having to factor in, well, how cheap of an apartment, how much square footage are we going to be able to afford, given the fact that we're going to have to pay this mortgage in West Texas until this house sells. Like, all this stuff is going through my brain. Childcare, like putting down, deposits on an apartment, putting down, enrollment fees and stuff like that for my kids, for daycare. Like, this is everything. And I'm thinking, these kids that are doing all these transfer portal shenanigans, getting all this money with NIL, more power to them. And they have God-gifted talent. They need to go out. They need to hone their skills, and they need to get as much money as they can get. But it's at the detriment of the sport. And again, from an Arkansas fan's perspective, I'm looking at all these guys. I think the last count I saw was 22, 23 scholarship players that just left. Just said, screw it. Screw the program. Screw these coaches. Screw my teammates. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get mine. Hey, man, nothing against you personally. If I saw any one of those players out on the street, I wouldn't bat an eye. I wouldn't think nothing of it. I'd probably do the same thing if I was a 19, 20-year-old kid in your shoes. But it's also a different time, right? Like, I remember when I was in high school 20 years ago, and I'm thinking, you actually were excited to go to college somewhere to play ball. I was in no way, shape, or form, fashion sense of the word, a massive athlete. I didn't have any sort of God-given talent or ability, pardon that text message I had from my buddy. And, what I did have was a big-ass heart and a lot of work ethic. And I didn't give a damn what I did to my body. Literally didn't care. I remember one day, one particular practice, I was a sophomore. I hadn't even really been on the high school squad at all yet. And we had just won conference championship, which is the highest thing we could get as freshmen. Like at the freshman level, 9th grade, in Greenwood, Arkansas, that was the best we could do. It's the best we could achieve. And we were the first one to do it in years. Matter of fact, the last 2 or 3 years, I don't think the teams had won any games. And we came in and just floored everybody. I think we went 7-1, 8-1, something like that. One conference, which was great. Just a handful of weeks later, we're on the field doing spring training for it may have been a couple months later. It was April time frame, so it's a few months later. Anyway, we're on the field. These guys don't know me from Adam. They don't know my name. They just know my number. They say, hey, number 64, hey, 54, whatever freaking number I was playing linebacker. And they would make fun of me, mock me, humiliate me, because I was small, I was scrawny. They were underestimating me. And what they didn't realize is that I really didn't care how hard you hit me. I was going to bounce right back up. I had a guy, offensive lineman, threw me in the dirt one time. I bounced right back. I mean, immediately, it was like I used my forward momentum of him throwing me, bounced, rolled right back to my feet, and sacked the quarterback. I remember he got so mad at me. He's like, what do you think this is? You think this is the Super Bowl? You think you're going anywhere? I said, yeah, I'm going after the quarterback. Thank you for giving me the assist. Line up, let's do it again. This happened over and over and over until finally the coach got so pissed at his offensive lineman, his starting offensive lineman, his all-state offensive lineman, got in dude's face and said, if I see you throw him one more time and you don't use proper leg movement and leverage and technique, I'm going to bust your butt down to be on the scout team and let him teach you a thing or two. And I was like, hey, man, I'm not here to start any trouble. I'm just here to play ball, make my guys better. I understood that was my role. I was never going to see the field on Friday night, and I never did. Hell, I never saw the field on JV night. I mean, I was that bad of an athlete. But I had heart, and I had pride, and I love my guys. I'll lay down my life for them. Still would. A couple of them are still coaching out there, you know? But I bring this up in correlation to college football because you don't see that anymore in college. It's a very rare thing. Since the NIL, transfer portal, it is a very rare thing. And it's unfortunate, but it's really kind of a parent thing. Honestly. And if you're a parent of one of these kids, this isn't aimed at you, but it's aimed at the totality of what parenting has sort of become over the last 20 years. Because since I was in high school, I've seen it. I've seen those kids that I was volunteering to watch in youth camps in church, and I would see the way they would snark or get snooty. And I began to realize what my parents were saying when they talked to me about this, or my aunts or my uncles talked to me about this. It's like, man, you know what? The way you talk and backtalk your parents, boy, I'd have gotten smacked. I'd have gotten lit up. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, whatever. You're just trying to scare me. No, they're right. No, they're right. We've gotten soft, gotten really soft. And you can see it. And you can see it how these kids are brought up. And it's really frustrating, too, because I'm thinking, like, you know, if these kids had a more disciplined upbringing and actually understood what making that kind of money meant for 99.99% of the people in the country, or even in the world, for that matter, I think they would appreciate their position a little bit more. I think they would acknowledge, hey, this is a problem. Let me take a step back, evaluate what's important to me, what's important for my future, and where I'm going to get the most return on investment. And not just return on my time or my energy, but also return on people I surround myself with. What kind of mentors do I surround myself with? What kind of like-minded individuals am I going to be in a room with more often than not, so that I can pick their brain and figure out what made them successful versus what made this person successful? Like, that's what makes you successful in life. It's not got nothing to do with this God-given ability. If you're a prodigy, great. Go out and get yours. Go for it. But acknowledge that you did not earn those skills. You did not earn those abilities. They were a gift given to you so that it might open a doorway that was otherwise closed to, like I said, 99.99% of people in the world. And you're in a unique position to use that skill, use that ability, use that opportunity to touch the lives of everybody around you. But at the same time, you have a unique opportunity to have your life touched by the individuals you interact with when you take advantage of that skill or that ability. And these kids don't get this. They don't understand that. So what I want to say, I saw this video earlier tonight about what Texas Tech was going to do to Arkansas. And this kid claimed to be from Valonia, small town in Arkansas. Had Eagles banners behind him, which is the high school mascot, and then he showed his Arkansas memorabilia. And I'm thinking, okay, this kid is an Arkansas fan. I'll hear what he has to say. Immediately out of the gate, Arkansas is going to get, what was it? Boat race. He said boat race. And I'm thinking, okay, this kid's like 5 seconds into the video, I can tell he's emotionally charged. He's not thinking clearly. And after about 5 minutes, I was like, okay, this dude doesn't know jack squat about the sport, doesn't know the first thing about how to manage a team, doesn't know the first thing how to manage a roster, and doesn't know the first damn thing about how the entire structure of sports as a whole operates. He was spitting out statistics like, well, Arkansas has this, statistically this good or this bad at passing the ball, whereas in Tech is this good or this bad at throwing the ball. Their defense is this, that defense is that. I'm thinking, dude, you're kind of making a moot point here, an extremely moot point, because I can compare the rosters that Arkansas has to compete with 8 games out of the year, and I can compare what Texas Tech has to play against roster-wise 9 games out of the year. say what you want about the conference schedule with the SEC versus other conferences. I don't really care one way or the other because, let's be honest, this year you had 3 teams in the SEC that were were definitely playoff worthy and got left out in the cold. Imagine if they had to play another conference game and 2 of those 3 teams were 9-4 instead of 9-3, or 8-4 instead of 9-3. Yeah. Like, there's your context, right? Like, we got to watch a bunch of SMUs and Indiana's get the doors blown off of them. And I'm a huge Rhett Lashley fan. I watched Rhett Lashley in high school. Dude dominated at Shiloh Christian with Gus Malzahn. Greatest high school football game I've ever seen in my entire life was a preseason exhibition between Wynn, Arkansas, the Wynn Yellow Jackets from the East, with D'Angelo Williams at running back, who went on to have a really good NFL career, and having Rhett Lashley at quarterback with Shiloh Christian and Gus Malzahn the head coach. Don Campbell, the general, as we called him, was the head coach out at Wynn. My family's from Wynn, so I have a lot of ties there. The greatest high school football game of all time. But I digress. You cannot compare apples to apples with 2 programs from 2 completely separate conferences and say, well, Arkansas is going to get boat raced because they're statistically worse than Texas Tech, when it's clear as the nose on your face that more than half of the conference of the Big 12 wouldn't even have a winning record in the SEC. Wouldn't even have a winning record. Now, I'm not saying that Arkansas is one of the top echelon SEC teams. They haven't been up there since Bobby Petrino's first stint at Arkansas. Arkansas has been trying to find itself ever since the motorcycle accident. And as a lifelong, die-hard, just down to my freaking soul Arkansas fan, it hurts to acknowledge that. It hurts. I have seen some outstanding athletes come through Arkansas since 2011. One of them I played ball with, Tyler Wilson. Drew Morgan, Grant Morgan, coached both those kids when they came up through Greenwood. None of this has anything to do with the quality of athlete at either one of these schools, so much as it has something to do with the realistic expectations of their circumstances. The realism is Arkansas has to play teams like Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Missouri, and now Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, go on down. And now South Carolina, who's on the rise. And yeah, any one of those teams is a national championship contender on any given year. Because let's be honest, now with the NIL and transfer portal, you really don't know what you're going to get. As a fan, what I have learned just by observing this year as a primary example, I look at all these other teams and all these other programs that have historically been great, and I'm thinking, nope. Michigan just won the national championship last year. And in every other instance in history in the last 40 years of this sport, usually translates to you having a great follow-up year. You might have a letdown, so to speak, in the sense that maybe you came up a drive or two short from winning your conference championship. Maybe you came up a drive or two short from getting into the playoff, something like that. But you had a really respectably solid season by comparison to what you did in previous years. Your tracks would usually look like this. You'd have a national championship, you'd come back down, but you usually stayed relatively at the same level. You didn't have these big drops like you do now. And that's what the transfer portal NIL has done. It's brought a lot of parity. And it's not parity in a good way. It's parity in a bad way. Because, you've got a lot of teams that are beating up on each other in every conference. I mean, we're talking about the Big 12 and the SEC. Just look at them as an example. How many 9-3 teams, 8-4 teams are in both of those conferences? A lot. And that's good for the conference. That makes the conference look good. but we're still playing a bunch of cupcakes on our non-conference schedule for the most part. I mean, Arkansas gets beat by an Oklahoma State team who had no business beating them. And I promise you, if Arkansas plays that team probably 10 times, Arkansas probably wins 7 of those games. But Oklahoma State is not a bad team. They don't have a bad coach. They just had a bad year. Again, it's that parity. You don't know what you're going to get. On any given day, anybody can beat anybody. That used to just be a saying. Well, now it's true. Now it's true. I mean, just look at what Vanderbilt did to Alabama this year. Look what Georgia Tech almost did to Georgia. I'm telling you, this parity thing is real, and people need to wake up to it. But back to what I was starting with, which is this young kid, God love him. I'm sure he wants to make a dream out of this. I don't mean to poop in his pudding here. Just shut your mouth, man. Seriously, just shut your mouth. If you can't show more respect for both squads, both teams, and speak to both organizations, to the quality of student athlete they produce, to the quality of education they produce, and the quality of, what's the word I'm looking for? The quality of entertainment that they offer to their fan base. If you can't be level-headed and respectful to each and every one of those things across both universities that are competing, then you have completely missed what the sport is about. Completely missed it. Completely missed it. So again, not to rain on his parade or anything, but that's what I think. Now, as to my thoughts on the actual game and the result, Arkansas had over 20 players. Like I said, I think the last count I saw was 22, 23 scholarship players opted out. They had half their offense was gone. They were down to their third string running back. And they had a lot of guys who had never caught a ball this year make some serious impact on that game. And you know what? That's great. That's great for those players. That's great for those moments that they got to capture on a relatively large stage. Liberty Bowl is nothing to sniff, nothing to snark at, turn your nose up at. None of these bowls are. These bowls are a big deal to these kids, to these universities, and to the fans. They're still a big deal. I know it may not feel that way because, again, you have all these, over the course of, over the entire span of the sport, you probably have hundreds and hundreds of opt-outs. And it sucks because you want to be able to see the best product on both sides of the field. But it's actually made the bowl games a little bit more intriguing, in my opinion, because you don't flip and know what you're going to get. And I think Arkansas for one quarter did in one quarter against Tech what I've always known them to be capable of doing. But Taylen Green is way too inconsistent. And I think that the offensive line has gotten overwhelmed by much more athletic defensive lines in the SEC. I was at the Texas A&M game this year, the last game they played at JR World, at least for a while. And I remember sitting there next to my best friend, and I was just telling him, I was like, dude, there's no way. We're up like 2 scores right now, and we shouldn't be. Arkansas should not be up 2 scores right now. And, of course, they came back. A&M came back thanks to that dead-gum fumble, and they won. But they created that turnover, and they created their created their opportunities for success by taking advantage of Arkansas's overlining weakness, which is kind of embarrassing to say this because it's a Sam Pittman coach team. It's their offensive line. Their offensive line is terrible. They can't block. Again, context being against the far more athletic and deeper rosters of the SEC, upper SEC echelon squad teams, because, they could have beaten A&M, they could have beaten Missouri, and they could have beaten Texas, honestly. I mean, there were so many times I'm looking at that Texas-Arkansas game, I still go back and watch it. I'm like, half a dozen times, I'm seeing I'm not even joking, wide open receivers, and Taylen Green is just whiffing on them. Throws the ball 7-8 yards over their head or to their side. He's not hitting them in the numbers. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is only a 2-score game. We're at home. We should be able to beat these dudes. We routed them 3 years ago. We can do it. We know we can. We've proved that we can. But, that's just the nature of the game. Every given Saturday is now going to have this recipe, or not recipe. The recipe assumes that you're following it exactly. You're going to have multiple hidden variables inside an equation. You have the formula for success. The problem is, up to this point, up until NIL and transfer portal and everything else has kind of gotten out of crazy and out of whack, you had a formula for success. But now you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 different hidden variables that you think you're going to have stacked in your favor, because you're thinking, oh, well, here's n squared. Okay, well, I'm going to add 5 points inside n so that when it's squared, it's going to give us a better opportunity for success. The only problem is you may be adding an advantage by adding those 5 points inside that formula, but you have no clue what that n represents. You could be getting a negative number, in which case, if you're getting a negative number, it'll be a bad day for you. Square root, probably not, because if you square a negative number, it actually becomes positive. But you get my point. You can be adding any sort of advantage around that hidden variable that you want to, but you still do not know what that hidden variable is going to be until you step foot on the field. And even then, you don't know what's going to happen in week 1 versus week 2 versus week 3 versus week 4. You can have the best laid out plans humanly possible. Do you really honestly think Georgia expected to go 6, 7, 8 overtimes with Georgia Tech? No, I promise you they didn't. I promise you they didn't. Absolutely 100% no way on God's green and verdant earth did they think that was going to happen. But it did. It did. Because, again, hidden variables. So I think Arkansas did in one quarter what I always knew they were capable of doing, but then they turned around and did what they've been doing all year, shooting themselves in the foot. My God, the defender catching an interception in midair, but then not properly securing it, dropping his guard, not being aware of his surroundings, so that a Tech player can just grab the ball out of his hands and secure an outstanding catch. That kid deserves highlight reels for the rest of his life for that play. It was an outstanding catch. But that's just one example. Another example is the turnover. You're doing play action, but you're doing this play action, you're doing a draw play, whatever, and the quarterback's supposed to be reading the defender, and a running back's supposed to know, based on the quarterback's hands and level of firmness and everything else, whether he's supposed to take the ball or not. But there's clearly miscommunication there. Now, again, that comes with the fact that you had a third-string running back, yada, yada, yada. Maybe they didn't have as many snaps in practice that they needed to be able to be 100% sure about that. But that should have been a conversation that they should have been having all week and month long leading up to this bowl game. Hey, when I do this, take the ball. When I do this, let go of the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like that like sound fundamental football should not be on a whim. It shouldn't be. Like, there was no Texas Tech defender that caused that fumble. That fumble was purely caused by being foolish with and being fast and loose with the football. And I think the same thing happened with that safety. You had a defender come scot-free, quarterback didn't see it, didn't audible, didn't change the play, didn't call a timeout. Like, Taylor Green's faster than every dude on that field, and he just sat there and just ate a safety. Same thing goes for Tech when they got their safety. I mean, Tech started running the ball pretty well on Arkansas in the second half, and they just kind of went away from it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, why? You know, questionable play calling, maybe. Or maybe they just thought that they found something in Arkansas's defense that they could exploit. But the same thing goes for Tech. You just don't know what you're going to get anymore. And again, it's part of those hidden variables. But I think Arkansas played well, considering I think that Coach Pittman, being a player's coach first, probably helped with a lot of those young guys. They wanted to play for him. They wanted to sacrifice their bodies for him. They wanted to get that win for him. And now Sam Pittman has done something that's only ever happened to Arkansas once before, and that's won 3 consecutive bowl games. Now, granted, they didn't make a bowl last year, so in my book that doesn't really count, but technically every time they've made a bowl since he's been at Arkansas, he's won. And that's great. He's won 2 Liberty Bowls. I think he played Kansas in 2 years ago and barely won that one. Tried to give that one away too, and then he pretty much ran away with the Outback Bowl against Penn State in 2021. So, he's had a solid career at Arkansas, and he's gotten us off of life support, which is where we were when Chad Morris was here. But I just got to tell you, man, as an Arkansas fan, I don't know where you go from here. If Sam retires, which whether he does or he doesn't, I wish him the best of luck. I love that guy. I truly do. If I ever met him, out and about in the real world, I'd have to give him the biggest bear hug because he's just the most honest and open individual you ever meet. He's both the same dude that you would want to have a beer with, but he's also the same dude that you would trust to chaperone a sleepover with your kids. And he's also the same dude you could trust to put these kids in the right position to be successful, not just in the sport of football, but in the sport of life. So to Sam Pittman, from Arkansas fans all over the country and the world, I salute you, brother. Good luck to you. If you stick around, awesome. If you're thinking about retiring, awesome. Go for it. You've earned it in the eyes of every Razorback fan that is a true Razorback fan. And, obviously we wish that we'd have had multiple 9-4 seasons, 10-3 seasons. But you know what? You gave us one hell of a season in 2021, and you've navigated the NIL and the transfer portal crap about as well as anybody else could probably expect. And man, for that, I got to give you mad props. So no way in hell could I have done that any better than you. I probably would have failed day one, checked out, would have never even tried it, never would have attempted it. So, thank you. So let's talk about next season. Let's talk about where Arkansas is potentially headed and what I think is in store for them next year. Having not looked at their schedule yet, I'm not going to speak as to a potential rankings yet or potential win-loss column yet. But what I will say is this, is that Arkansas has the potential under Petrino. Colin plays for a second year. Taylor Green getting another year with Petrino and getting some, halfway decent weapons. They got a potential here to basically stay right where they're at, maybe even get a little better in some places. And I know a lot of people are like, well, they're 7-6. Well, that don't mean anything. Well, yes and no. 7-6 team that if one or two different things go differently, like literally if one play goes differently in 3 different games, this Arkansas team is probably 10-3. Honestly, like that's not a knock on the teams they lost to. That's just a fact. I mean, I'm looking at Missouri, I'm looking at Oklahoma State, and I'm looking at Texas A&M. All 3 of those games were extremely winnable. Extremely winnable. And you think, well, yeah, but they got lucky when they beat Tennessee. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. There's a chance that Arkansas on its better days can hang with the upper echelon teams of the SEC. But because of the lack of quality of depth at Arkansas versus teams like Georgia or Bama or Tennessee or other teams like that have the ability to, have a better, easier time recruiting those players, that's still something they have to overcome. And I think that they can overcome it if they get the right guy at the head coaching position. I know I just spoke to Sam Pittman and how much I respect and love him, but, I think we've seen what Sam's ceiling's going to be. He's going to be a 6-6 to maybe even the occasional 8-4 guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I think for Arkansas fans who have become accustomed to seeing conference championships and national championships and competing for those titles in most other sports, I think that the football program, the fans of the football program, deserve more. And again, all the love in the world to Sam. And maybe his process is to ride this out until they can find the perfect guy. And if that's the case, go for it. Because Arkansas fans do not want to deal with this roller coaster of going through head coaches like we were going through there for a while. We just don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to do that at all. That's not what we're here for. That's not what we're looking for. We want to get the right guy at the right time for the job. And right now, it's Sam Pittman. And will it stay Sam Pittman? That's entirely between him and Hunter Yurachek. But I think Arkansas's got a shot, just like I thought they had a shot this year at 9 or 10 wins. And I knew it would be a long shot, and they would literally have to have just about everything go their way, or at the very least not have the turning points in the game go the way of their opponents. Does that make sense? Like, you don't necessarily have to have everything go your way. You just need to make sure that the things that bit you in the ass don't keep biting you in the ass over and over and over in every game, which happened literally every game. As much as I love my Razorbacks, I was so frustrated, so angry all season long because every single game we played in was the same damn problem. Taylor Green's running for his life. He's not stepping up into the pocket. He's not using pocket protection in the way that a pocket quarterback should be using it. He's scrambling out, which takes him off his mark, which makes the receivers have to scramble to support him, puts them in a precarious position because now they're having to not only get open, but they're now also having to navigate where the defenders are in correlation to where they're trying to get to based on where Taylor's at. And it's not a recipe for success. You know, you don't have a bunch of Justin Jeffersons and Jamar Chases out there. You just don't. Nobody does. That's not something that's normal. You can get away with that when you've got those two out there, or, you know, to use another example, you've got, you know, Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. Yeah, when you got dudes like that out there, you can do that all live long and day. You can't do that with most teams. You just can't. Rolling out of the pocket needs to be a once in a blue moon thing. And for Taylor Green, it was way too often the only thing he would do. And it put us in a lot of precarious positions, and it caused a lot of problems, and it would put the offense in some very tumultuous situations because he would turn the ball over, put us in bad field position, or he would waste a perfectly good, you know, 3rd and short. And it's just like, what the hell, man? What the hell? Or offensive linemen would have to adjust, and they would miss their mark, and they would get called for holding or get called for illegal touching. It's like, what the hell? Again, like what's going on? So I think if they can just shore up the areas they were struggling this year, protect the ball better, play more sound, fundamental football, and get another year with Petrino in the system where, you know, the quarterback and the offensive line and the rest of the skill position guys that have been there a year can really start to understand Bobby's system, because Bobby's system is extremely. Tyler Wilson explained this to me once in a conversation. We met at the local Mexican restaurant there in Greenwood, and I asked him this. I said, "What was the difference between playing for, you know, your playing styles between you and Ryan Mallett? What was the significant difference?" And he told me, he said, "I'm a gunslinger. Honest, straight up. I ran whatever play was called 95% of the time. I didn't adjust. I made it work." And to be honest with you, that sounds exactly like Tyler. Having grew up with this kid and played ball with him, like watching him grow up, like that's exactly who Tyler is. Tyler was going to fit that ball in that window, and that was going to be it. And he did a great job of it too. But Ryan was much more. He was much more analytical, I guess. I mean, he could see things unfold on the field pre-snap that would make a lot of other quarterbacks just go mad with the level of detail that he was always analyzing and predicting. And you know, you're basically playing chess with the guy. He was kind of like a sort of like a Tom Brady in that sense, I guess, or maybe even a Peyton Manning. I'm not sure which one of those would be more apropos of a comparison, but something along those lines. And you could see it. I mean, got us to the Sugar Bowl. You know, we get that block punt. We're one bad throw away from winning the Sugar Bowl against Ohio State that year. So I think that Bobby P is going to have those guys ready. Another year, nothing. It can't be said how much of an improvement that could possibly make. But then again, we could also just implode and go back to being 4-8. again, the hidden variables, man, the transfer portal, you just don't know what you're going to get. So from one Arkansas fan to the rest of you out there, if you're out there, love you. Respect for the burden that we've carried all this time, trying to cheer on our Hogs. We've had some great moments across all of athletics. Great success. But Arkansas football just seems to be that one thorn in our side we just can't quite shake off. We know we're capable. We know we can get back there. We know we can compete for SEC championships. We know we can compete for national championships. We probably won't be able to do it year in and year out, like, say, in Alabama or Georgia. But we can certainly, especially in an expanded playoff field, we can absolutely make some noise. Absolutely make some noise. And that's really all I'm looking for as a fan. You know, I just want to be able to know that my boys are going to be put in the best position so they can be successful and so that the fans can have a lot of fun watching them be successful and be competitive. Don't shoot yourself in the foot every single game. If you have a bad game, that's one thing. Everybody's going to have a bad game. Everybody in the world is going to have that one really bad day. It happens in sports all over the world. But that's one different from having consistent problems, whether it's with penalties, turnovers, you know, again, not playing sound fundamental football, things of that nature. Like, those kind of things should not be a problem at this level. And that's where Arkansas, I feel like, needs to course correct, because it reared its ugly face all season, and it reared its ugly face again in the Tech game. And on the topic of Tech, man, y'all had a great season. Don't let this deter you if you're a fan. You guys beat both teams that were in the Big 12 championship this year. Y'all had just as much an argument to make the playoff as anybody else. So I think that you guys are right there. I think you guys got a bright future. And I think that Tech is going to have as many opportunities, if not more opportunities, by comparison to Arkansas, just because of the conference they're playing. And that's not a knock on Tech at all. That's not what I'm saying. Take advantage of that opportunity and get you 10, 11 wins in a season so that you can get into the playoffs and maybe make yourself a run. Because let's be honest, in every sport across the globe, it does not really matter what you do in the regular season. If you can get into the big dance, anything's possible. And I think Tech, more than Arkansas, is going to have more opportunities for that. And I wish you guys the best of luck, man. Wish you the best of luck. Love y'all. Praying for you. And see you soon. Zero out.